Yeah. Yep. We're expanding our reach, building an empire. Good evening, everyone. I will go ahead and call tonight's regular meeting of the Board of Directors on October 8th to order. Thank you to those attending in person tonight, as well as on Zoom, and those staying engaged by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the table on my left. Comments will take place during a designated community comment portion of our agenda. And before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Icestone, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Lingo, Finch, and Board Secretary Coven. First up on our agenda, we have our student representative updates. And Tate High will provide us with a written update that's attached, I think. First up, in person, we have City High and Nicholas and, is it Annie? Ann? It's Anya. Anya. So if you want to come to the microphone.
Hello, it's Nick.
Anya.
First things first, homecoming. We've had an exciting week at City High. Our principal, Mr. Bacon, said this year was the best homecoming week he's ever had in his 15 years here. There's absolutely no problems. We've had great and positive feedback from everyone, which is, I think, a miracle with the fact that we've also had a record number of entries in this year's homecoming parade. For the homecoming dance, we sold around 1,100 tickets, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year so far. So the dance was great, and everybody had a good time. This was all student-led, so it was pretty awesome. Student Senate helped working hard to make it the best we can. So yeah, the Iowa City Police Department also helped out with the parade, as they've done with the past. They even said that this year it went absolutely great with no complaints.
This year we did something a little different with the homecoming court assembly. And instead of presenting the court only to juniors and seniors, which we usually do, we include the presentation of the homecoming court in the fall pep assembly. Everyone had a great time watching that, and it was definitely a great experience for the freshmen and sophomores that have never experienced that before.
For athletics here at the school that leads, we've had a very successful start to the year. Our Little Hawks football team has won 2 games back-to-back with 2-point conversions, one with 22 seconds left and one with 25 seconds left. In addition, our Little Hawks cross-country girls freshman and sophomore team also has a all-time record of 15-0 this season, which is very exciting.
There are some exciting things happening in our City High academics as well. We have 4 Little Hawks up as National Merit Scholar semifinalists, which is very exciting, as well as our journalism team making it to the Pacemaker semifinals. With the change in the 2 lunch schedules, student feedback has been pretty good. B-lunch has always been a struggle for students as it interrupts class time, but the students really like the longer lunch and are much happier without the possibility of getting the dreaded B-lunch.
All in all, we've had a positive start to the school year, and our students have been doing really great at City High. Thank you, and go Little Hawks.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Liberty High, Naomi and Elena.
Hi, I'm Elena.
Hi, I'm Naomi.
So Liberty hosted a few weeks ago our Gold Out football game at home where we played Prairie. And this game was hosted by our club, the Difference Makers, where we honored a kid captain who was battling cancer. And we also honored cross-country coaches who have also battled cancer.
Our fall sports are wrapping up. Volleyball senior night is actually tonight, starting at 7. 7, yeah. And then Liberty Band won 5th place at Corridor Classics, and Color Guard won 2nd. And then
And then the Difference Makers Club also hosted a blood drive last week, which I heard was pretty successful.
practices for our fall play, the Crucible, are in way and going pretty well. We had a lot of student participation for that.
And then Liberty's also adding some outdoor classrooms to our school. We already have tiered seating, but we're planning on adding tables as well. But our AP Environmental Science students helped with the landscaping by planting plants during class.
And lastly, our homecoming week was a really big success. We had a lot of families turn out for the parade, and then is it Power Duff?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Power Duff game was a success. The juniors did win, and then the Friday football game was a whole vibe. It really set it up for the homecoming dance, and the homecoming dance was really nice. We had a great turnout. The DJ was great, and the kids had a great time.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have West High, Mustafa, and Grace.
I'm Mustafa, and
Grace Fincham.
yeah, thank you for having us. And so like first off, we'd like to start with homecoming. Overall, I think it was a success. Like everyone was happy about it. On Monday, like of the homecoming week, we had our second annual parade, homecoming parade, and the turnout was like huge. We like were representing like a bunch of sports and like certain clubs and like a lot more. And then later that day, we had our Trojan games, which is like powder puff and man ball, which is just volleyball but with boys. And sadly, we took the loss in the man ball, but we came back and won powder puff. And then for the athletics, we started off the week with our home meet in cross country, and we won both the varsity and JV divisions, which was great. And then next, we went. Hold on. Sorry. Yeah, and then volleyball, we had a home game against City, and then we also took the W in that, which is pretty nice. And then we kept all the whole school together basically with the Spirit Weeks and challenges, and making sure we like posted the highlights of each Spirit Day on our Instagram to make sure like everyone felt included. And then on Friday for the athletics, we went against Cedar Rapids, Jefferson, and it was a great turnout. We had our whole stands filled, and yeah. After that, we had our homecoming dance, which was also amazing because we went with a different DJ and different light system, not as like the same as last year. And the guy was chiller than last year, which was nice. And then everyone was like centered into the gym when they started playing Fiend, which was pretty fun to watch. But yeah, I think homecoming was a great like season this year. There we go.
Yeah, so on the topic of sports, our fall athletics are wrapping up right now. The seasons with cross country and swimming begin their championship seasons later this week. Swimming will also go against Linmar today, and West will be going against Cedar Rapids, Washington at the end of the week for football. And then there's a big rivalry game tonight against Liberty for volleyball. It's a good game. They're, I think, ranked like in the top 10 for the state right now. Our student commons at West has been under renovation for a very long time, which we talked about last time we were here. But this will be opening up in the next week, and this will expand the opportunities for students to have space to eat lunch and do homework and just relax and have fun. And we will also open up our school coffee shop, also being moved in that area, which will be really nice. Thank you. Go West.
Yeah,
Thank
let's go
you.
West.
Next up, we will have the ICEA update from President Brady Shutt.
Good evening, President Malone, Vice President Abraham, Director, Superintendent Degner. I'm Brady Shutt on behalf of the Iowa City Education Association. I would like to take the opportunity to offer a formal public congratulations to the staff at all of the district schools for the successful High Reliability Schools Level 1 certification. Level 1 certification recognizes and celebrates the safe, supportive, and collaborative culture of each of our schools. This is a consequential milestone representing clear commitment from you, the school board, outstanding leadership from Superintendent Degner and his team here at the central office, and the dedication and passion of the staff and leaders in all of our schools. And I think it was Executive Director Proctor who mentioned during the presentation at the last Education Committee meeting that we are distinctive at the national level because it's not just one or two of our schools going through certification, it's our entire district. And so, as you also know from our time together at Mann Elementary at that Education Committee meeting, we are working now on level 2 of HRS, which is effective teaching in every classroom. We are building on our collaborative culture by implementing an instructional framework that helps us develop a common language for improving our instructional practices both individually and more importantly, collectively in our teams. Feedback from my colleagues has been overwhelmingly positive, and I think that certainly was reflected in what we heard from City High School and Mann Elementary School that night. So to our administrative teams, thank you for your work and leadership. And to the board, thank you for your continued support and for helping us sustain our commitment. Oftentimes, I think organizations have a commitment they make and priorities that they set, and then they change course. I've been very appreciative that we've stayed the course on this and appreciate everyone's work on that. My last thing, too, we're approaching fall break, so I want to give a shout out to the calendar committee and to the board for their support. And also, I want to urge folks to take advantage of the upcoming break. As veteran teachers told me when I was a younger teacher, the school year is a marathon, not a sprint, and that's what I tell the younger teachers now, even though some days it feels like you're sprinting in a marathon, but it really is, can be a long year. So I think it's important for all of us, and that includes everybody here, to take time away from work, to make sure you decompress and connect with the people that you love and the things that you love to do. So thanks. I know that, Kristen Peterson and Kim Colvin are really important on that calendar committee, so I just appreciate the work that we've done to build out these opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is community comment. If you have a slip, please bring it up to the front. This will give me an opportunity to have those turned in and I can read our statement. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speakers who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the screen above Board Secretary Ms. Colvin. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour, and remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And with that, our first speaker tonight is Tony Gatewood.
Hello, friends. Just gonna keep showing up. I love the meetings. I love the rigmarole of just going through very very intricate details, and I love sharing, stories as well. My name is Tony Gatewood. I am both a pastor and community organizer that lives in Southeast Iowa City. I have a 13-year-old at Southeast Middle, and I have a 9-year-old at Lucas. And just a quick, because my son and my oldest are thinking about civic engagement. My son came back home from school, and they were debating issues in the community. And my son was like, "Dad, I don't think we need so many self-checkouts at the Hy-Vees." And I said, why don't you need that? He's like, "It's taking jobs away from people." And I was like, "Is there anything good about having self-checkout aisles?" He was like, "Nothing's good about taking jobs from people, Dad." So just to let you know, at Lucas, they're having conversations of civic engagement for your local Hy-Vees, and Hy-Vees are important to me, especially how well they serve the community. One of the things I wanted to, talk about is that we have parent-teacher conferences coming up pretty soon, and again, I'm constantly wanting to be sensitive to how do we as a district and a community think globally about the fact that I think, as I've just learned recently, there's like 73 languages spoken in our schools. I think cultures float with those languages as well. So I think about how do we get more parents engaged, and how do we get more just folk understanding what's happening in our district. And I think it starts, I think I've said this before the last couple of weeks, it starts with hospitality, and it starts with overwhelming people with empathy. And I know no better way to speak, even if you don't speak 73 languages, you might have tried 73 different dishes. And so I don't know if this is a possibility, but I just want to encourage both the district, if you have connections to principals or PTO meetings, to if you're going to have snacks or anything at these parent-teacher conferences. I signed up myself for Southeast Middle to bring, they're having to sign up for like chili and things like that. And so I'm going to bring a curry, right, with rice. And so I know it's easy, for our districts and schools to bring the hot dogs and stuff like that, but some of those things aren't really like culturally appropriate for certain cultures who may not eat pork or anything like that. So as you know, I volunteer at the food pantry, and over time and time again, parents aren't picking up the giving pork dishes and pork chops and stuff. It just doesn't work for some of our communities. So I would encourage, find a good stewed fish, chicken, or beef dish with rice, and you might create more welcoming as a district for others who are, are trying to figure out. Like you'd be surprised at how many people would say, "This district represents us, and we want to be more involved." And so I care about that, and so I'm hoping my curry dish, as weak of an attempt it may be, will speak something empathetically to our parents. And so I hope that if there are ways for you to be thinking about that as a district or board of directors, how do we welcome our 73 languages hospitably and think global citizens, I think we will have a stronger district and more people moving in and not moving out. So thank you.
Thank you. I will apologize to the next few speakers. Our timer is not working, so I don't think you'll be able to judge how much time you have based on that, but know that we will be keeping time here, and Director Lingo will give you a signal when you're down to 30 seconds.
I'll do it like you do at an academic conference. You get it up a minute, and then you get 30 seconds.
Sounds good. So he will hold up a piece of paper to warn you. Next up, we have I always mispronounce your name. Is it Viana? Yeah. Vienna. My apologies. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm here after a year. What happened on every single day in the past 76 years before and after October 7th of 2023? Do you know what happened? Do not learning institutions have to be free of bigotry, biases, and political agendas? Again, the flag half-staffed order stated schools are encouraged to do it out of respect. It wasn't mandated, it was left to the school district to decide on that. And the district has shown us again that our identities, our blood, our sufferings, and mostly that our children, your own students, that they are not deserving, they have no respect or empathy. The district action and lack of empathy is a testament that if my own 3 children sitting in the back right here get slain in Palestine, they will not be worthy of a public statement or condolences from this district. You say nothing justifies October 7th, but somehow October 7th justifies 76 years of ongoing oppression and colonization and ethnic cleansing. Do you know what happened between October 7, 2023 and 24? I'll let you know what happened. The US spent $17.9 billion on military aid to Israel to slay the Palestinians. Up to now, it is estimated that 180,000 Palestinians were slain in 1 year only. An entire generation of children in Gaza died or barely survived before even receiving their birth certificates. 814 mosques destroyed, 35,000 orphanages created, 80% of Gaza infrastructure decimated. There's 30,000 children missing limbs right now, 1.5 million displaced Gazans, 300 slain journalists. All Gaza colleges and universities and schools are gone. 3 churches destroyed, 1.3 million displaced Lebanese, 3,000 slain Lebanese up to now. Medical infrastructure in Gaza destroyed, water access behind Gaza is gone, destruction of South Beirut, ethnic cleansing accelerated in the West Bank, bombing of Yemen, white phosphorus sprays on civilizations, genocidal reality and genocidal denial, genocide facilitating new world ordering of Arab world. The school district not only fell short, but is complicit in perpetuating divisive anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim sentiments, and the complicity is not new to us. We as humans, as parents, we stand for the justice and peace. We will continue to support the rights of our children. We will continue the important, but often very exhausting work of advocating for the recognition of Palestinians' humanity in our school district. Only when the district and the educators stand bravely to uplift everyone, including Palestinians, can our school ethically and credibly teach the next generation how to pursue justice and peace. It is excruciating that the district is using this day only to dehumanize Arabs and rights of natives to their lands. All atrocities that the media has accused Palestinians with has been debunked, and there were no shred of evidence to prove the lies. All were manufactured opportunities to seize land and slaughter all who do not fit in the picture of great Zionist state. Everything that has been happening is about domination, not about self-defense. As a district, what is your political agenda right now? Are you supporting the well-being of all your students equally? We need an answer for this. And my children demand an answer for this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rima. It's R-I-M-A. My apologies if I mispronounced it.
Good evening, everybody. That's correct, Rima Afifi. I'm following up on Diana's comments, and I want to bring up 2 things. First, the real importance of a sense of belonging for all students, which I think is a requirement and a mission of a school. And when you selectively choose to honor some people that die, but not others that die, then the sense of belonging is really taken away from many students. Viana was very clear about the numbers of Palestinians that have died in the last year. I also wanted to focus on the fact that half of those are children. So let's just assume you don't care about adults, but you care about children since you're in the educational sector. You would think that half, like almost 20,000 children, make enough of a difference that you could uplift their deaths. The other thing that I really want to focus on is the fact that over the last year, 399 school buildings have been either partially or completely destroyed. And as a Board of Education, I would also assume that you care about schools and schools as a place where children feel safe, feel a sense of belonging, and have hope for the future. I hope you take this into consideration as you consider all of your students, not just some.
Thank you. Next up, we have Shahad.
My name is Shahid Suleiman. I have been a student in the ICCSC community for almost 10 years now. I have sat in countless history classes, English classes, math and science classes as well. I have learned the curriculum as well as the next person. I consider myself a good student. I'm taking government right now, a class designed to teach us the history of America and all their wrongs as well as their rights. We learn how the country was ever changing in an attempt for betterment and how inclusion and equality is a goal that we still stand for. Yet, in the past 10 years, I cannot recall a time where Palestine was mentioned for its actual history, its beauty, and its culture unwarranted. Israel, in almost every history class I've been in, there's always something called Israel. On every map and every lesson about the so-called conflict in the Middle East, there's Israel. You taught us of Hamas and global studies in the 7th grade, misframing it to the maximum, but not even mentioning the IOF or Israel's constant violation of human rights. You taught us how much money the United States gives to Israel and how they are our allies, how they earn their own sovereignty, and yet never once have you brushed the surface of the realities of the Palestinian people over the 7 decades of genocide and the displacement that they face. They are murdered in front of our eyes daily on our computers and cell phones. The news is written as clear as day, yet I can't name a time the school district has made a Palestinian feel welcome, safe, or understood. I'm a Palestinian American standing right in front of you. The difference between my fate and the fate of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians is that I am here and they are there. Our blood is one and the same. I am a Palestinian and I am standing right in front of you. Can you hear me now that I'm not something you can lie about because I'm here to face to face with you? You see me now that you can't just turn off the news or turn off your phone and look away? I should not have to ask you, because you guys are well educated at all in the school district, to relook at your curriculum or the way you guys treat your students and their struggles. I should not have to ask you to treat my people like people, rather than something to brush under the rug. I am a Palestinian American, and I will be the first to tell you the education system and the way that you sympathize with the oppressors but never the oppressed in the year of 2024 is in dire need of change. I am a Palestinian American. Can you see me now? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Erica.
Hi, sorry, I was out with a toddler, but I am up here yet again. I'm a Shimmick parent. We've been here many times the last few weeks talking about the closing of the schools. And I guess I first wanted to just thank Superintendent Degner for coming to Shimmick. We really appreciated that conversation and learning more about some of the plans and hopefully a serious slowdown of the plans. But I wanted to also, I've had tons and tons of conversations with parents, both at Shimmick but all over the district, particularly the east side. In the last several weeks, we've tabled down at the farmers market, we've knocked on doors. And so I just thought it was important based on that and the conversations that we had with Superintendent Degner to follow up on a couple of things. And one of those was that it was mentioned that there are now people open enrolling into our district more than there have been. In the past, we used to lose students and now we gain a bit. And I had suggested, and I thought I wanted to point it out here, that we should ask those people why, because maybe those are things that we could work on making even better in the district or more appealing, because my understanding is part of our budget issues is that we had about, I think, like 65 students leave. And so finding out why people are coming, that might be part of the solution. I also wanted to raise 2 other issues that have come up frequently amongst parents I've talked to. One of them, I guess, is a 2-parter, which is, could we get rid of the laptops in our elementary rooms, and can we get our kids outside? Speaking from my very personal opinion, I have considered putting my kids in private school because I really like the opportunity for outdoor experience. My kids are really little. What I want for them is play, outside time, social time. And I'm hearing that from a lot of parents. And I raised that issue because, not because you should just do whatever I think is best, but because it might be others that agree with me. And we know there's at least 3 schools that focus on outdoor sort of education here, plus a lot of camps. And so it might be worthy of asking our parents, what do they want and what's making them leave or think about leaving before they actually leave? And the other issue that has come up a lot in conversation that I personally can't speak to, but I felt that I've heard it enough that I think it's worth mentioning, is safety and behavioral issues in schools. We had 2 parents at Shimmick speak up that they have kids at Shimmick and also kids that they've pulled into private schools. I think that's an interesting and important dynamic that we should be investing and thinking about. I know it's very complicated, and I don't mean to say that it's not, but it's an interesting enough dynamic where you have people that clearly support public schools but have pulled some of their kids out, that it's worth thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mona.
Salam and peace. I am Mona O'Day, and I am a Palestinian American. I would like to say a few words about colonialism and apartheid, and how crucial it is to have the voice of the oppressed indigenous people heard and taught. Israel's genocidal violence has killed an estimated 100,000 Palestinians, while simultaneously carrying out bloody assaults on the West Bank, massacring more than 740 Palestinians there in the past year. Last month, the Israeli settler colonial regime expanded its violence to Lebanon. In just 2 weeks, Israel has managed to murder more than 2,000 Lebanese people. These massacres are not new to the indigenous Palestinian. It happened before, during the Nakba. Do you know what that is? Our catastrophe in 1948. And after either being murdered or forcefully removed from our homes back then in 1948, Palestinians were never allowed to return by their colonizers. That event drives many Palestinians to refuse to leave Palestine, even after heavy bombardment, raids, Israeli settler encroachment, kidnappings, tortures in the Israeli prisons, and economic dispossession. The question of why Palestinians refuse to leave their homes and ancestral land is one that is deeply personal and fundamental to the Palestinian identity, just like the olive tree is. But how much has our local education system allowed the students here to learn and discover about that? Ever? How much time has been given in schools to understand the indigenous people's struggle for liberation from their occupiers or colonizers? All the while an active genocide is happening right now against the indigenous Palestinian people. The education system has been used before to hide or ignore the truth, lie or mislead against the many atrocities indigenous people have faced from their colonizers in the past and even the present. The humanity of a colonized people exists. Just like so many previously colonized individuals, they existed. Their struggle was real. The Irish, the South Africans, the Algerians, the Moroccans, the Tunisians, and on and on and on. And the erasure thereof is also real. May it be in the education system, by the French education system in Algeria, telling the Algerians they don't exist, they were French all along. Or by murder, by theft of land and culture. All of that is real. That erasure, it's real. The abuse of education risks leading people to dehumanize an already embattled indigenous population. I am part of an embattled indigenous population, ladies and gentlemen. A well-rounded education in the history of the plight of the indigenous people will increase understanding and a sense of humanity. It is so much less easier than to say, oh, look at me, they must be thinking I'm a terrorist. Standing against colonialism and apartheid is to stand with truth to power. I, as an indigenous woman of Palestine, I will state loudly what other indigenous people around the globe shout, we are still here. My existence is my resistance, as is my dress. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Newman.
My name is Numan Abu Isa. First, I want to thank you for being a public servant. We trust the future of our kids to the education you manage in this room here for the whole school district in Iowa City. It's that important that you are forming the future generations in Iowa City. And there is something going on. I call it in the elephant in the room. The American politics does not like to describe it, does not want to talk about it. Prime Minister Netanyahu came to our Congress and he had 52 standing ovation after he is charged with committing genocide. He went to the United Nations, and the majority of the United Nations delegations left the room when he started to speak. He hired a few dozen people in the bleachers to clap for him, and I don't want you to be those people who are clapping for him in this room. You are raising a global citizens, not only American citizens. In addition to being American, you are also raising global citizens. And you can take an opportunity here, having this massacres. It's going to be in the history books. People, next generations and after next generations are going to be talking about it and what we have done about it. I know the governor has asked some offices to lower the flag, have staff, and suggested that it be lowered. But we know that our government is one-sided. It's very clear to us. I hope it's very clear to you, and it's a learning opportunity for you to have sessions for your students to learn about the conflict, to learn how we spend our money, to learn how to manage our budgets, to learn about history. This is going to be in the history book, and it's your chance to learn about it, to teach our kids about it. And you are choosing not to do so. And this is a shameful action if you continue doing what you are doing now. There is enough of people in this room and in this community who are more than willing to come to your school classrooms and talk to your teachers and explore the questions about this issue and answer the facts and present the facts to your students. You are responsible to present those facts, and you cannot put your head in the sand. So I'm looking at all of you and asking you to take a more active role in educating our students fairly and treating our students fairly too. For example, if you want to lower the flag for 1,000 people, you should lower the flag 40 times for 40,000 people. One child was dead in October 7th, and you lower the flag for that child. 16 or 17,000 children have died since then, and you can lower the flag 16 or 17,000 times to be fair. I just want you to be fair, be respectful, respect your own dignity, respect your own role in this community, and take an active role, not a passive role, and do not clap to Netanyahu like the hired ones in the UN. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes community comment. Next up is approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Mark me for a yes.
Please.
Thank you. Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is, before we get to the consent agenda, did directors have any questions regarding the bills this cycle? Hearing none, are there any items that directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion regarding tonight's consent agenda?
I move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is tonight's public hearing, the Instructional Support Levy Program. Vice President Abraham.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing to consider participation in the Instructional Support Levy Program. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on September 24th, 2024. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on September 28th, 2024. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Okay, and that concludes tonight's public hearing. Next up is policy review. We have the 200 series policies for school board and policy primers back in front of us. Before a vote tonight, Director Finch, were there any additional comments that came through? I know you haven't had a policy and governance meeting since we met last.
No additional comments from last
Great.
meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from directors? Hearing none, that takes us to tonight's discussion items. First up is our Ombuds Annual Report, and welcome. Superintendent Degner, did you want to say a couple of things?
I'll just try to fill some space here as Janet comes up to the microphone. We're excited to have her here with us this evening to share some end of the year statistics from her office, some of the work that she was engaged in throughout the year, and kind of do a comparison of that to previous year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Janet here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Degner. So I'm always thankful for this time to present the annual report, especially during this time of the year, in order to honor Ombuds Day, which is the second Thursday in October. So this is the information I'll be going over today. So the American Bar Association recognizes Ombuds Day in order to promote and highlight the Ombuds role. Ultimately, the Ombuds role is meant to facilitate outcomes that build trust, enhance relationships, improve communication, and promote continuous progress within the organization. And for this year's Ombuds message, I chose to emphasize the value of an Ombuds in my annual report, and to talk briefly about the many benefits an Ombuds role may bring to any organization, such as addressing a wide variety of concerns, providing support to all constituents, serving as that central information and referral resource, addressing issues which may not rise to the level of a formal complaint, preventing issues from escalating, and contributing to a healthier organization overall. So, as a reminder, concern is a term that's used throughout my annual report and through this presentation. As a reminder, it is an umbrella term. A concern may very well be a question, a feedback, whether it's positive or negative, or request for support or resources. These are the concern categories that I use to categorize the concerns that come through my office, and these are per the International Ombuds Association, which are typically, these categories are typically used by ombuds such as myself. Oh, and just to mention, there is additional detail provided on these categories in Appendix A and B in the annual report. These guiding principles are critical to my role and important to understand when reviewing the annual report. So independence, meaning that my role operates quite separately from other district departments. That's very intentional so that I may serve as an impartial or neutral resource. That informality is important to remember as well. I do not operate or do not participate in formal processes. For example, I do not conduct formal investigations and do not operate as an office of formal notice. Confidentiality is that defining characteristic of the ombuds practice. Communications with the ombuds, with myself, are confidential to the maximum extent possible. There are exceptions such as mandatory reporting concerns, Title IX concerns, as well as concerns for imminent harm towards self or others. These strategic goals remain the same as the previous year, unchanged. I will continue to work towards these goals going forward. And then now jumping into the general contact and concern data. So this chart provides the number of contacts and number of concerns recorded in the last 3 years. So what's great about this chart is that it's fairly flat, as you can see. What's exciting for me to know and to see through this data is that there are more and more individuals continuing to contact and learn about the Ombuds Office and utilize it as a resource each year. So who is contacting the Ombuds Office? Similar to previous years, it's predominantly employees as well as parent, guardian, and community members. So I do compile in my annual report parent, guardian, and community member concerns, student concerns, and employee concerns separately so that I can take a closer look at the type of concerns coming from each group. So you'll see here the most frequent concern categories for parent, guardian, and community member concerns listed, as well as the most frequent concern category for student concerns as well. As a note, the top concerns for these groups were the same as the prior year. I do provide subcategory detail as well. In my annual report, for example, for parent, guardian, and community member concerns under constituent relationships, you'll see that the most frequent subcategories were academics, curriculum, athletics, extracurricular, and discipline. I like to provide that subcategory detail to provide a better understanding of what types of concerns are coming through under those most frequent concern categories. So jumping to that employee concern data that I take a look at separately as well, you'll see the top concern categories listed here. As a note, there was a slight difference from the previous year where peer and colleague relationships was among the top 3 in place of career progression and development. I do provide that subcategory detail as well for employee data and concerns. For example, under evaluative relationships, the most frequent subcategory detail was discipline, supervisory effectiveness, and respect treatment. So this chart provides the frequency of concern categories over the last 3 years. It's great to have that data, 3 years of data to look at in regards to the information coming through my office. I want to make sure I'm looking at the information and data within a year, but also taking a look at the bigger picture and looking at that data as a whole. So it will be interesting to see how this data changes going forward as time goes by. So jumping to the key feedback survey results, I didn't receive as many responses as prior years. However, I did receive almost an even split of responses from parent, guardians, and employees. And the feedback I did receive was predominantly positive, as you can see here. I also always like to touch on these 2 questions from my feedback survey because they point towards the impact of the Ombuds Office. So you can see the responses here on what would have happened if the Ombuds Office was not an available resource to you and what was the result of contacting the Ombuds Office. So in closing, I'm energized to see every year that more and more people are continuing to learn about the Ombuds Office, to pass on information about the Ombuds Office, and continuing to utilize it as a resource. And I'm ever grateful for the support of district leadership in my role. So thank you to Superintendent Degner, the district administrators, as well as school board members. It's truly an honor to serve in this role. I enjoy my role, and really, it's a pleasure to serve this community in my position. So, and any questions?
Directors, the floor is open for questions.
I don't have a question, Janet, just a comment. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. And it's such a pleasure to have you in the district. I really think it's one of the best additions that has been made to the district since I've been on the board. I'm in various social media mom forums, and people post problems that they have, and always someone will comment, hey, do you know that you could go talk to the ombudsman? Janet is amazing. And so you get glowing reviews online, which we don't get glowing reviews online. So I just, I see that and I'm like, oh, Janet is doing such a great job. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Director Williams.
And I'd like to add to that, Janet, that this is a great role for the district to have, and you are a fantastic person to be fulfilling this role. I would like to ask, under the Ombudsman's roles, part of your presentation, you list primary duties, and the second primary duty is raise awareness of concerns and emerging issues.
Yep.
Is there anything that you would like to add here in public and in front of the superintendent?
To raise awareness.
To raise awareness and concerns?
Well,
or we can meet in private if you'd like.
The way that I operate for my role is, I think it's very helpful to provide this annual report publicly, to come here and present and provide that information on the website as well for anyone to take a look at. But what behind the scenes there, I'm always providing that upward feedback from individuals if that's what they're asking me to do. And every year following the annual report, I make sure to meet with each district administrator to share any department-specific data that I'm able to share and trends so that they can take that into account in their work and decision-making going forward. I really see district administrators and district leadership as those subject matter experts, and my role is, I hope that I can just serve as that supplemental information that they can take into account in the work that they're doing. So those conversations I really enjoy. I think they're among the most impactful things that I do, is those individual meetings where I can provide that department-specific trends and data and get feedback from district leadership as well on how to continue improving and how to be most helpful. So,
Well, thank you. It's very encouraging. Thanks.
Sure.
I just wanted to echo what my colleagues said as well. We so appreciate you as an to our district, and I think it's very appropriate that you're here tonight when we are also going to be discussing safety and security issues, because I think that the work that you're doing with building trust and addressing conflict and de-escalating situations is so integral to that work. And obviously your role grew out of that safety committee that we had 4 or 5 years ago. I wasn't on the board when that occurred, but your work is very important to our district, and thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Finch.
I think I'd like to just add on to that, because one of the other things we're going to talk about is cell phones. And I'm looking at the biggest number that's on there is in this category of harassment and bullying, and 2 years ago it was 3, and then it's 14 and 14. And in the kind of description on the report, it does talk about emails and videos and audios and that types of stuff, and I'm just kind of curious if that's something we need to be paying attention to as we delve into whatever our electronics policy is going to be, because I don't know how much of those numbers are fed by phones and social media and things like that versus person to person, but it stood out to me as a big number there, and it did kind of tie into some of our topics.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight and for the very detailed report as usual. Thank you. Next up, we have our cell phone policies, cell phones, technology, and artificial intelligence. Superintendent Degner, did you want to say a few words before we turn it over to our admin?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I want to ask you guys too, is what direction you'd like to take this. Obviously, we have some documents loaded there for you with the parent and student survey data that's returned back at this point, and then we also attached the teacher and administrator survey data that you'd seen previously. Last time when we met in work session, we talked about bringing back a couple sample policies. If you remember your timeline, I'm due back to you with a recommendation about what a policy would look like. And so tonight, I think, honestly, we'd like to hear a little bit of your conversation or reaction to either of those policies. Lucas is prepared to kind of walk you through them if that would be helpful. If you've already kind of looked at them and have a good understanding of them, we don't necessarily need to take that step. I would say that from the consequence portion on there, that is something we were still talking to our principals about this afternoon. And so I think those would need to be continued to flesh out about what makes sense and what is reasonable. But I would say, I think the further we've gotten into this issue this fall, that the limited use policy is probably one that I think we're feeling more comfortable about starting with, really in an effort to protect that instructional time. I think there's concerns from our administrators about how we would really handle the complete ban policy from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And so I would say that's kind of where we're at today. And if that's not where you guys are at and you're looking for something different for me to come back with at the end of October, we might want to consider a couple additional steps. I know we still want to have some additional conversation with Brady and his team about feedback around these policies too. And again, not zeroed in on one. I hope you've heard from me throughout this. I think we're open to looking at how this potentially works. But I think we've seen or heard some improvements since the start of the year from folks. And I think there's even a couple things we could do with going back to survey staff or surveying leaders, parents, students about, if policy changes from the start of this year lead them to a different potential survey result than maybe what we saw from teachers at the beginning, because we were transparent with our leaders too about the disconnect between what teachers are reporting and what they're kind of sharing. And I think, you have some lived experience from cell phones here the last several years too, and any efforts they tried to take this year maybe are still in, some of those survey results are still informed from past years. So I don't think there's 100% right or wrong answer about how to approach this, but I want to be honest with you about maybe the way we were leaning about what that recommendation might look like. So with all of that, is it helpful for Lucas to go through either of those, or would you guys just rather have a conversation and we can answer questions as you talk about it?
I'm ready for a conversation. I'm not sure about everybody else.
Let's kick it off, conversation.
I did have one question. At the last meeting, when we discussed this, President Malone asked if there would be any sort of policy that the all secondary principals could agree on. Or I don't want to put words in your mouth, or it was something like that. Was there one? Or
I think this is
yeah. So
what
these
we
samples
see
would be
this sample-
examples
yeah.
of those that we would work to get our secondary team supportive of. I think what I'm trying to share is that their preference, without speaking, kind of speaking for them without them here, they're probably more on the limited use policy. Obviously, if we directed them that they had to do the complete ban, they would work with us on that. I do think they're going to have some questions to come back about, okay, how does that functionally work? And logistically, that's what they're going to be spending a big part of their day on. And I don't want to get lost too much in the weeds on that tonight. I think the bigger thing was to communicate with you, just knowing all of that. They're kind of on the limited use, but they would agree with, Lucas, I don't think we're speaking out of turn. They'd agree with the framework from this limited use policy. They continue to talk about consequences today that might make sense and successes that each of them had in their buildings or things that haven't worked as well. So I hope that answered your question, Director Lingo.
I guess I would, and maybe this is not quite walking through, but on the limited use policy, that's basically what we have in a very scattershot approach right now. And so I guess I'd like to know how this is different and how is the enforcement different? Because I think if I kind of read it and it still kind of feels like a lot of it's all on the teachers to do it, and I know that enforcement is not going to be consistent. And so I'm having a hard time feeling like this is a change.
Yeah, when we took a look at the limited use ban, the sample policy that you see is kind of a creation using the 8 different secondary schools that have their policy. So you're right, what the limited use ban does see is more aligned to what's currently being done. Where the big changes within our schools occurs is with what the responses look like from both the teacher as and an administrator. As Superintendent Degner had mentioned, the work that still needs to be done are those sample responses for non-compliance with students. One of the things we talked about today with the administrators is we need to be very cognizant that this is a balance between both teacher and administrator responsibilities. It can't just fall too heavy on one or the other. We know that the teachers are on the front lines of making sure that that policy is enforced within the classroom, but then what happens when students don't. So a lot of those conversations really centered around what is going to be our approach for students that don't follow those policies. Again, the difference, because we have multiple schools within our system within their own policies, is exactly what is the responsibility when students don't comply. So the language differs between all of our buildings, so that's sometimes difficult when having conversations. And then the response and the ability to work with our families. One of the things that I wanted to highlight that is not involved within those sample policies, and I kind of mentioned this at our last work session, is I think we don't do a fantastic job of going through and educating our students about the appropriate use of cell phones. That is an area that we must improve, and then I kind of talked through the difference of the series of education of students, the prevention of cell phones, and that intervention when those things occur. So we are not systematic with how that occurs. The big thing is how can we agree upon a policy that's the same across our entire system, no matter what school our students attend.
Thanks, Lucas.
Yeah, so piggybacking on that, I am not supportive at all of the limited use ban because I see no difference in this policy and what currently exists today. And what exists today is not working. And maybe our administrative team thinks it is, but our teachers do not think it is working. One of the biggest issues I have with the limited use ban is I feel like I have been crystal clear again and again and again on my position. I don't want to put words in Director Abraham's mouth, but I know she has too, that enforcement cannot fall on the teacher. And the very first thing that this policy does is it puts enforcement squarely on the classroom teacher, that it's going to be their responsibility to ask for the phone if they see the phone during class. That is what is happening now. It is not working. Our teachers do not want to get into battles with students over their phones. They do not want to get into the power struggle. They do not want to use instructional time that they should be teaching our students to deal with cell phones. And so that, to me, is just a non-starter that I feel like we've said over and over again at various tables. I am sorry if the administrative team thinks it's going to be difficult to enforce a total ban. But what I know from reading the book and these conversations is that these cell phones are bad for our students' development as well as our teachers' experience in the classroom and their ability to effectively use instructional time. And so if somebody's going to have to work hard, I think it's going to be, in my mind, incumbent on our administrators to figure that out. I do not understand, and it's Sean's question, which I didn't hear an answer to. I don't understand how this policy is going to create a substantive change into what our current policy is. And I don't buy for a second that students need to be educated about cell phone use. They're told when they come into their classroom to put away their phones, and they do not listen. So they know what they're supposed to do, and it's not happening. So where we are right now, I just cannot support a limited ban, and I'm still where I am, where I was 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, the bell-to-bell ban that we see in the sample policy, the other sample policy.
I'm reading the results of the survey. It's very clear to me, anyway, that cell phones are not helping our instructional program. In fact, they're hurting our instructional program. Having them available for use during the class time is not a good thing. And that seems to be the opinion of both teachers as well as administrators, as well as parents. So I'm more inclined for a complete ban policy approach than I am a limited use policy. I also, perhaps to be a bit wishy-washy, I'm willing to listen further to discussions about what the administrators are telling you. I do agree with the point that we have to be clear that teachers are not responsible for this. The district is responsible for whatever policy we're putting in place.
I do think the one part where we need to think about that critically is teachers are going to have to play a role in whatever policy we have. We only have at most 4 to 5 administrators in a building of 1,700 kids, of 1,300 kids. That's not enough eyes to consistently enforce a no phone policy, even if it's all day long. And so teachers are going to have to be a link in the chain to make sure that we can effectively do that. I think what we're trying to share and communicate, I think the conversation about it is what is the right balance, and where can we ask for help every time, the kids sit down in the classroom, monitor hallway usage, lunchtime usage. So I think everybody's trying to figure out what is that right balance, but to think that it's going to be just the principals that can enforce a building-wide policy, it's not going to be possible. We are going to need help from every adult in that building, beyond teachers, even support staff that goes with this. I think a point they talked about too is in study halls, right? I mean, sometimes those are our folks that probably are receiving the least amount of pay, have the least formal training, whether it's study halls or passing time, and asking folks to intervene in those situations, right? How does that go, and how do we not escalate struggles? So I think there's a lot of those types of scenarios that we're also wondering about, okay, does that escalate into another larger discipline issue? It may not, right? If we have a very clear approach and consistent, similar to how we've seen and executed some policies on fighting, that, if you get into that next step, that, there's a very clear and distinct alternative. But I do think it's some shared responsibility of staff members in the building. It's going to be really difficult for just the administrative team to approach that. And so, again, what is the right balance? I think that's what we're seeking.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's going to involve more than just administrators. Everybody in the building will be involved in this. But I think to Director Williams' point is that, if they're whipping out that cell phone every time during passing time, that's just, one more opportunity for them to continue to have it in their hand, and then for teachers to have to intervene. But if it is just standard practice that it is in their backpack all day long, I think that they're less likely to have those interactions with teachers. I don't know if maybe some sort of hybrid policy where we allow it, one time during the day. Maybe I know the benefits of not having a cell phone during lunch are wonderful, but maybe we allow it during lunch, or maybe we allow it during study hall. I don't know. I'm open to maybe some sort of hybrid policy, but I think having it out during passing time is really just asking for more of those conflicts between teachers when the bell rings.
Yes, to kind of piggyback on that, it's the cell phone, whatever it may be, the electronic device, it's really, as long as the apple's there, the forbidden fruit is in reaching distance, it's always going to be an issue. And that's why when I look at the sample policy of the partial ban, I'm just kind of like, the students still have it. It's going to vibrate in their pocket. There's a reason that I throw my phone in my bag when I sit up here. It's because I don't want to be bothered. And it's that, because, wife texts me, I'll probably look at it, but it's in my bag, so I don't. And when I think through this, I think of the student the same way, where if that cell phone is in their pocket, it's buzzing, it's hard not to look at it. It's why I don't bring my Apple MacBook here, because my text messages will be filtering through the screen throughout the meeting. I don't want that when I'm here. And that's kind of the way that I look at this when these partial bans, even when I took an interview from students from one of the newspapers a couple weeks ago, and at one of our high schools that has one of these partial bans, and the one student's like, yeah, it's fully enforced. I don't have it in my class. The other student's like, I have it in four of my classes. We were on we get our cell phones out. And it's like, that's kind of like, it's kind of funny because they're arguing with each other over who has the easier day of having the cell phone. But I just don't see how the partial ban can help the learning environment if it's what we're already doing, and it's what brought us to the table tonight.
I'm going to kind of rebut a little bit, not you specifically, but just the recent parts of the conversation. I think we had two things to think about. One if we have specific data that we're using to tell us that we need to make a change, right? Like back to the what problem are we trying to solve? If we implement either one of these things, we should be able to then evaluate the data to find out if one of them is working or not and pivot if we had to. So that's still there. The other thing is we talk about the kind of the disconnect between the admin and the teachers in the survey results that we had. Would there be benefit in sending out these policies in a survey to our teachers to say, if you, like, is one of these policies, do you think it will work better? Or are you in favor, like, will it have an impact, right? If those are the folks that we think that are saying have the biggest issue with it, can we not ask them which one they're in favor of? Because they are going to be part of the solution, right? It seems like they have I don't know, I guess their finger on the pulse a little more than the rest of us, right? So I would be in favor of just asking them which they think would be successful. Not which one they want to do, but which one they think would be the most successful. And successful doesn't mean, magically kids are off their phones. Successful is that we're able to actually implement it with fidelity and like it actually is being followed everywhere.
Where I get hung up is that there are a lot of schools here in Iowa banning cell phones successfully. They have figured it out. Their administrative team is enforcing policy and it's working at the schools. And so that's what I'm having trouble with this hearing the recommendation is if other schools can do this, what makes us different that we cannot?
I mean, I would just push, I don't think they're saying we cannot do it, because in talking to some of those districts that have successfully banned cell phones, it is teachers and staff that do have to step in with administrators and enforce it. So, I mean, I've heard from people after seeing our agenda today with suggestions on, try a hybrid model, not quite what Director Finch was suggesting. A couple people suggested only do the partial ban in high schools and everything below do full ban. No, I thought about that, but I'm more inclined that sometimes we just have to rip off the Band-Aid and put in the work to make a policy successful with a complete ban. I know we did ask you to go back and get feedback from secondary administrators, and hearing that they prefer the limited policy. That's really what we're seeing tonight. Isn't that at all different from what we have on the books now? So I'm just not inclined to go that route either. I know that's difficult probably for them to hear if we ask the question and it comes back and we're like, nah, that's okay. But that's not, just seeing the policy before us isn't different than what a lot of the buildings already have on the books. I think that's what the struggle is tonight.
And I think we understand that. That's the same pushback I'd want you to know that we gave them and that we've tried to talk through with this, right? I think it's just important for us to also bring forward, the voice of the people that are going to be most affected by this and also then be on the front lines of executing something like that. I think like you're saying, Director Williams, other schools have done that, right? I think that there's also other schools that say they're banning phones that when you really read what they're doing something closer to the limited use policy, that it's not just the beginning of the day and the kids never see their phone until they leave. I think there's some that are trying to do that and probably executing it okay. I think the other thing, right, is where do you want them spending their time? And I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of that time spent on this right away. And the hope would be, just like anything, right, that we spend a lot of time there and then we don't spend as much time in enforcement and development of that policy, that it's freed up. And so I think the sentiment from the board is pretty clear, right? That we're interested in the complete ban, and we should bring back some logistical considerations on how we would make that possible, right? What needs to be in place to do that. So unless there's, kind of divergent thoughts, I think, we kind of have our next step of what we need to go back to the team with.
I would agree. I think I would be more in favor of the complete ban. I think the difference about this policy, the limited ban, one is that everybody would have the same policy, because I remember printing them off and trying to find them and reading them, and they're all different. And so I think just the fact that we'd all have the same policy and try to use the same consequences and have the same verbiage, get that information out to parents. I think parents are aware we're talking about it. So maybe, we need their help as much as anything to help with the cell phone ban too. So I think it is an improvement on what we had, the limited ban, because everybody would have the same. But I'm really more in favor of the complete ban. I don't see it being in the works that we'd buy pouches and all that stuff. I think we would have to rely on put it away. And then you run into the complication that Director Lingo mentioned, that away is still within hearing. So I'm not sure about that, but I think we need to try it and see what happens.
And just one final comment. If whatever policy we do land on, complete ban, there will need to be some education for the students, because I think getting back to what you were saying about the education piece, it's not necessarily how to use your cell phone, or it's bad to have your cell phone out, but walking through the full policy of from beginning to end, this is what our policy looks like, and allowing that opportunity for students to ask questions, our staff to ask questions, and figuring out how to make sure our parents are actually reviewing the policy and allowing them that opportunity to ask questions on how that's being implemented for their students.
President Malone, can I just add one more thing to add to that as well? Is we touched on the idea of a digital citizenship class, perhaps. I brought up maybe adding it to the 6th grade curriculum. I do think that is important. It seems our educators think it's as important as well. So I hope that maybe we can explore something like that.
Sorry, everybody looks so sad now. I'm sorry. Any other comments?
I don't think so. I think we know kind of the next step there. I think for us, we'll also probably, I think maybe Sean over here talking about data points, right, as we go along the way. And so we'll try to work through, steps for consequences. We'll bring back something centered around the complete ban and what that would look like. And then, what does that, secured phone look like during the day, and then what are the steps if a student does do that. Thanks to Molly for talking about probably what is different, because I think, we weren't kind of jumping around from that question. I think what was different on that limited use one would have been, the consistent consequences and also the consistent language. But like I said, I think we know our next steps, so.
I also think we have to start thinking about how we're going to monitor progress. What are we trying to solve? We want more engagement with instruction. And so that's hard to measure. So I don't know, but we need to somehow think about that and what we might do to try to measure that.
Going with Director Abraham there, whatever we do, and if we do go to a full ban or some sort of full ban, really looking at the disciplinary data when we come to that point, and keep that in mind when we have that report in this. Is it a spring report, right? The disciplinary data, I'm trying to remember.
Comes in the APR, so
Yeah.
it's usually, in the winter when we deliver that.
Okay. Next up is something equally as fun, our safety and security, that we will have Deputy Superintendent Ramey, or I'm sorry, Superintendent
I'm going
Degner
to go
will
ahead and
kick
open
us
this one.
off.
Yeah, so thanks, guys. This, you've seen some communications coming from me at a pretty regular basis to our schools specifically, or maybe those haven't been directly from me, the building principal, but you also saw a couple communications come from me district-wide, one today, along with Police Chief Liston. Concerning data around this, we had 6 threats of school violence last year. This year, we've already had 7. And so just the alarming rate about the increase of these, and then just the, there's multi-layers of it. It creates a lot of fear and concern, rightfully so, with our students, staff, and families. It changes the operation of our organization any day or evening that we get those events. And we also don't want to create a scenario where people become numb to these and just assume they're non-credible. And so for us, there's a elevated level of concern there with the increased frequency, and it always is a good time for us when those happen to reiterate some of the things we've been reiterating out to the community, and then also just to take a look at our school safety approach. And Chase mentions here right in the title that it's a layered approach with a lot of different aspects to it, that it can't just be one piece to this, that we have to have many parts working together to try to keep us as safe as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chase, and he's going to walk you through some of our approach to school safety, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions, or he will too, at the conclusion of the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Good evening. Nice to be with you this evening. This is a topic that I've had the privilege to speak with you all before, and so some of this is information that we have talked about with you in the past, especially when we changed approaches a couple of years ago. But as Matt mentioned, it's also a nice time to have a reminder given where we've been the last couple of weeks. And we'll finish off by giving you a snapshot of all the different strategies we have in place to help jumpstart that conversation that Matt talked about. And really one of the first things we want to talk about is framing our approach around our why. For a long time, we simply had this idea that all we needed to talk about was an active shooter. And we really changed our approach to understand that it's about more than that, and really centering on that idea of student success is our passion and student safety is our priority. Now, Matt called me out on this, so I will go ahead and say that, unfortunately, I did not make that up. It's an offshoot. If you've flown very much, some of the airlines have, or one of the airlines in particular, has a similar saying about what they do, but it really resonated that our students are our passion, but as we look at that, their safety when they're at our buildings every day truly is the priority. And so we really wanted to reframe that conversation and look at it from this idea of overall student safety and how we manage our crises. And as you look at crisis prevention and emergency management, like everything we do, relationships is at the key. And it's a continuum of concerns, not just one piece. And I'd pause to point out a couple of people why I get to speak with you about it. I don't lead this work by myself. Actually, a team leads this work on a daily basis. And that's Kate Callahan, Kristen, Jeff, Ben Grimm was here, and there's a few others that serve on that team, our internal safety team that leads a lot of this work for us. And it truly is a group effort. It resides with all of us, not just one person. And so I appreciate what they do. The ongoing board support and the thank you, you've played an instrumental role in this as well, as we've brought a different approach to you to consider that you all have given us the backing to move forward with and adopted policies as we've implemented new things and changes that have been different from the past. Also, Ruthina and I had the opportunity to share part of this presentation at the School Board Association last year. And so that's another thing that we're proud of, is that other districts are looking to us as leaders in some of the work around this. And so I appreciate President Malone's collaboration too. And that is another part of that, is that ongoing collaboration and that ongoing professional development and the safety training as part of this work. And like most other things, we have to create that buy-in, and that's not only buy-in internally, but that's buy-in with our external partners as well. And so we look at that relationship with local law enforcement and how they can help us move some of that work forward, and not just saying, hey, can you help us? How are we going to plan for these type of events and bring them into the conversation so we can pull on their expertise in this work that we do. One of the big pieces that we'll talk about a little bit later that we were missing here was a common language. And different buildings had different things that they would call an emergency event. We work with multiple groups of law enforcement, they had different languages they were using. So how do we bring everyone together around one common language that we utilize to communicate? And this last bullet is something that came out of a conversation we had with the board a couple of years ago, is that we wanted to move to something that was trauma informed, that when we talk to our community, that when we talk to our students and our staff, we kept in mind them, and that it wasn't so much of trying to scare people into what could happen, but to really support them and understand the different traumas that could be caused by these type of events, and how we communicate in that type of transparent and informed manner. So when we talk about it's not if, but when, we look at some of the things that have taken place in our district over the last 5 to 7 years that we are trying to address. I said that, we went from this approach that was solely focused on what happens when there's an active shooter in a building. But if we just focus on this, there are crises that happen in our building almost on a daily basis. And you see some of those listed throughout here that we're now able to respond to in a much more systematic approach in the work that we do, because it's not just about that active intruder, thankfully, right? We have not had an active killer in our buildings. We did have a parent display a weapon in a school building last year, but we've not had that active killing situation. But we have had all these other pieces that have taken place, whether they are bomb threats or cyber threats that Matt mentioned at the beginning, to the derecho. Medical emergencies are a pretty common occurrence. And so all of these are things that we believe, in terms of crisis management, we need to be able to be prepared for and help to address. And as you look at that, and that idea that we can't just focus on the unspeakable, our schools, as far as American society goes, remain a very, very safe place for our children. And so you see some of their things that we can not necessarily prepare for by our protocol, but other dangers that our children face. And that last line about the likelihood of a child being killed by a gun on school grounds, and that number, while I said that our schools remain some of the safest places in America, a statement like that is of no comfort to our colleagues in Parkland or in Sandy Hook, our friends up in Perry, or even our teammates down at Wood. And so we also don't take it lightly, and it's something we definitely need to prepare for. But again, it's along a continuum of things that we need to prepare for our students throughout our school community. And this is how we do that. Our move to our common language and our standard response protocol. It's a derivative of a program called I Love You Guys, which was developed by a set of parents after their child was killed in an attack in a school building. And actually, we did a training on I Love You Guys with our administrators at the beginning of the school year in August. And the keynote speaker was the former principal of Columbine High School that was there during the attack. And it's one thing for our team to get up and talk to our principals. It's another thing for them to hear from a colleague that's actually lived through that, and how you move forward as a leader. And so it's very powerful for our entire team. But you see the 5 protocols that we have there: hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, and shelter. And as the statement says, it's not the overall approach to how we would handle an event, but it's that initial kickoff. It allows us to get into a situation in a way that we utilize a common language that people understand, that then they already are in that mindset of what we need to do next in that work. Here's an example of some of the different events that could take place. We showed on that earlier slide some of the things that had happened, and we haven't had this in place for the entirety of all those events. But if they happen now, here are the different protocols that we would utilize inside a school building. Along with that is what the parent or community communication might look like. Now, look, every situation's unique, every situation's different, so it doesn't mean that we might not do something differently depending on the specific circumstance, but this at least gives us a guide to how we might approach that. And we've shared this with our community. You might remember at the beginning of last school year, we rolled this out because we had been inconsistent of when we were sending messages. And so we wanted to make sure our parents and our community knew, hey, you should expect a message in this event, but maybe not in this event. And then we sent another message this fall. Did it I couldn't remember what was in that. Reiterating it again this fall, because that communication piece, that transparency piece on it is so important to parents being a partner. Director Abraham talked about being a partner in the cell phone work. Our parents need to be a partner in all the work that we do, and what we do around safety and security is no different. So we want to make sure that we are very upfront with them in communication as we move through these pieces. One of the other key elements of this work is a relocation reunification strategy. I mentioned the work with some of our community partners, and they've been very instrumental in this. And a quick kudos to Kate Callahan. She's done a tremendous effort on lining this up. It's become something that we train annually. And quite honestly, it is probably the best oiled process that I hope we never use. Between the safety committee, how our facility teams respond, the framework that we've put in place, it's quite impressive how they've mobilized different agencies in our community to be responsive to this for, again, something that I hope we never, ever have to activate. But I think that talks to the power and the importance of this work and being ready because of the important approach to it. Now, what you will see that's not included on that slide is the location. Right? We're not going to give that away. That's one of those things you don't do. If there's something at a building, we're not going to tell the bad guys where we're taking everybody. And so it's something we keep secret, and then would communicate again out to our parents in the unfortunate event that would be something we would have to activate. But our team should be very proud of the work they've done in this area and the way they've really brought a number of different community agencies together to do this work. And again, I'll go back to that modeling piece. And other school districts are now working with the county to emulate the process that we've put in place for if there was an event in one of their districts as well. So I know I've gone fast, but I know it's kind of been a long evening. We want to get to the discussion, but here's 8 or 9 of our top points that we would really look at as our primary elements of our approach to crisis prevention and emergency management. You see the stop, don't prop sign. That's something new that we've put out in our schools. Matt mentioned it's a layered approach, right? But the research also shows us that some of the simplest things that we can do are also some of the most effective. Keeping exterior doors locked, not opening them up for people that you don't know, or quite honestly, anyone that hasn't gone through the right protocol. Our fences as perimeters, we appreciate the board's support last year when we took steps to start installing fences at our remaining elementary schools that didn't have them. Things to slow intruders down or to force them people to go through the right channels to gain entry into a building. And so we see those layers and how that works. That third bottom bullet from the bottom, the shadow resistant window film. Last year, the state made many grants available to each school in the state, up to $50,000 for improvements to their safety and security. We made a commitment as a district that that's what we were going to do. It's not bulletproof glass, but it's a film that goes on there that makes it shadow resistant. Again, a layer to slow down the bad guys as they would try to get into the buildings. And so that film is in locations across all of our school buildings in the district. Those are a couple of the highlights. As we go to this last slide, those are 28 of our measures that we have in place regarding safety and security here in the school district. And they probably don't have all of them on there. But as you look at the increases we've tried to make over the last 5 to 10 years, you see that list on the left-hand column and the middle column of pieces that we have in place. That right-hand column are things that other districts that we've heard from or talked to or just know out in public are doing. Some of the things we've considered and discarded. Some of the ones we're not considering. Other ones are things that we are in discussion about, as we're always looking at ways that we can think that we can enhance the safety and security measures. I would point out that second one, the push button emergency alert on staff badges. If you read anything about one of the more recent shootings in Georgia, that was something that the staff members had, and it was something that really saved a lot of time. And so we know that there's districts that have implemented that. Also, the last the last item on there, enhanced classroom door locking mechanisms. We have locking door mechanisms, but locking doors is a lot like the discussion we had on cell phones. It's about how we implement them and how we keep doors locked. Back to that piece about the simplest lines of defense are sometimes most effective. According to the I Love You Guys Foundations, a student has never been killed behind a locked door during an active intruder training. Back to that story in Georgia, the young man actually went out to his car, got the weapon, came back in and went to the classroom he was in. The door was locked. They wouldn't let him in. He then went to a different area. And so we know that some of these very simple, straightforward measures, as long as we implement them with fidelity, will go a long way in helping us secure the safety of our students as we look at this very layered approach to what we do. That was short, but I'll admit probably didn't give it enough time, as important as the topic is, but we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about it, answer any questions, or take any suggestions that you might have this evening.
Thank you, Chase, for a very informative presentation, and it actually helps me anyway to try to get some better idea of how to confront the security issues that we're facing nowadays. I want to go to the building fences at all elementary schools part of it, because as you know, we've received some disenchantment with people, especially in Longfellow, which is the school that all of our kids went to, and we lived a half a block from Longfellow for over 15 years. And I'm very happy that we're continuing to plan to put a fence around Longfellow. That's part of our safety plan.
Correct.
And that's what we should do.
Yes, thank you.
First, I just want to say that I agree with Charlie. One of my first memories of moving to Iowa was a friend of mine's cousin being abducted off of a playground by an estranged parent. So it's one of those weird stories that just always is set in my mind. So when I hear the fencing, that's always what my mind goes first to. This is a question for the administrators, and I'm sorry, usually I do better at sending these in advance, but it's more of, is there a consistent theme to any of these threats that you've been seeing this fall? Because you said that there's so many more in this short period of time versus the entire year last year.
I don't know. I mean, they come through social media, you know, I think it'd be hard to say a theme. I mean, even with 7 of them, pretty hard to probably get too much consistency out of, just 7 data points. But the good news is I would say people are passing them on readily, right? I mean, I do think, our whole approach of see something, say something continues to work. Kids are talking about it. They do let us know, and that's allowed us to be responsive. And so intake has been from, multiple angles, kids, law enforcement agencies. But I think the need to report it is definitely something out there. I think what we'd like to encourage people to do is not to share it and not to continue to send it around. As my communication stated, getting it to us or the authorities is the best way to get the situation addressed.
Thank you.
I will have to say, every time after, I think this might be the second or third time an email that went out today, very similar, has gone out this year. And I can say that just what I see on social media, like for the next couple of weeks, if somebody posts or shares something, immediately you have like 5 or 10 people take that down. Have you told the district? And it disappears. I'm like, wait, what was that? And it's gone. So I know our families might get tired of it, and we don't want to desensitize them to the message, but thinking of different ways to say the same thing, or maybe having our principals send that out in a weekly message, it does help. It makes a difference. I just wanted to share that because I don't know if the team knows how much of a difference that people are helping each other to remember, no, that's not what the district wants. You should really call that in to, and everybody says Superintendent Degner, and I'm like, please no, don't call him. There's other people. But I think that's a good message. Going back to your presentation, this is just something that I noticed, and I don't know if that was also designed for that, but the shatterproof film, it also makes it hard to see through. Who's ever on the other side, because I've been in some of the buildings that have actually gotten it installed, and it's, at first I'm like, no, I can see, but it really does make it hard to see who's on the other side, because then your mind's like, wait, is that a shadow or is that a person? So kudos, I love that, because that keeps folks safe, and all you see is sort of shadows. You don't see actual people. So I just wanted to point that out in case you hadn't noticed, but I'm sure you have. Any additional comments, questions? Thank you so much for your time. Next up is the IASB 2025 legislative platform. That will be everything that our delegate this year will vote on, and it's just highly recommend, yes, the delegate who is also currently speaking. That will be everything that the delegates vote on, and it's just recommended that we have an opportunity to officially review it and voice any questions or concerns, because typically if board does not agree on changes, the delegate typically votes yes and keeps it moving. So unless there's any comments on voting differently, you know how the delegate will vote.
I'm sure the delegate will vote very, very well. I do want to just state something that's been on my mind. The IASB actually has a webinar thing on school board legislator relationships, right? And I actually participated in it, and it's really very, very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And so to me, it seemed to me like it would be helpful at some point if the IASB puts in their legislative platform the notion that school boards and legislators need to develop their relationships with each other. And the webinar had a number of suggestions, including, tours of schools, presentations by students, things like that.
Noted. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, that takes us to tonight's action items. And first up is the 200 Series Policy School Board. Is there any comments or questions from board members? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the 200 Series Policies Board.
Seconded.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Did anybody get it?
Yeah, I voted.
I voted. I'm not getting it.
Okay, you want to do roll call?
I think I will. Malone.
Yay.
Eastham.
Yay.
Williams.
Yay.
Finch.
Yay.
Abraham. Wingo.
Yay.
Hightstone.
Yay.
All votes been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is policy primers. Were there any questions, comments from board members? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the policy primers 502.1, 603.1, and 700.
Seconded.
Board Secretary Coven, you want to try or you want to do roll? Okay.
Just made me log back in, so hang on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just FYI, Board Secretary, it still has my last vote showing. Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is our Instructional Support Levy Program Resolution of Participation. Were there any comments, questions from the board? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is the SBRC application for English language excess costs. There is a recommended action that should be read as written, and I don't know if CFO Kurth or had comments before we take action.
Yeah, I'll just briefly share that this is something that gets brought before the board every year. It's used to be called LEP, allowable costs, but this is for costs for providing English language learner programming that exceed what the district was funded for, and this is actually for last fiscal year. So this amount that's approved will then get added on to our authority for FY24.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion?
President Malone, I move that the district's administration is authorized to submit a request to the SBRC for a modified supplemental amount of $3,411,787.12 due to excess cost of providing the EL program in FY 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
No.
Now it's showing you all not present at vote. I'm going to do a verbal roll call. Malone?
Yay.
Easton?
Yay.
Williams?
Yay.
Finch?
Yay.
Abraham?
Yay.
Lingo?
Yay.
Istone?
Yay.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is Director Liaison Reports for the past month. Are there any items that directors would like to highlight?
I forgot to put mine in, but I have to say that I went to 2 homecoming parades, Liberty High School and City. Sorry to West, it was the same night. So, but it was a very good time for the kids. They loved it. They got lots of candy, and now I'm arguing with them over candy. So it's great.
Nice.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. That takes us to agenda setting. On October 22nd, we will start the night off with policy and governance, and they will start at 5:30. It will be the 203 Board of Directors Conflict of Interest and the 300 Series Policy for Administration. That will be followed by our regularly scheduled meeting. We'll have Education Showcase. Do we know what that will be as of yet? I'm just always curious. Okay, great. As well as public hearings. There will be several more that we approved tonight that will be added to that. And will you all be ready for another discussion item on the cell phone in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, the original timeline is an action item, so I think we'll be informing, the board of the recommendation and an action item, hopefully with direction from you then to move forward on, move towards implementation for the second half of this year. So yes, we will be ready. We'll have something back to you.
and there will be an equity update and a couple action items, but I'm sure the agenda is not complete. Are there items that directors would either like to see at this meeting or make sure it's still on the parking lot?
What is the equity update? Do we know yet?
Laura, I don't know if you know offhand what you had planned for that equity update. I could maybe pull it up here in a second. I do know CFI, Center for Innovation, we plan to do a presentation and then a budget workshop, kind of a budget basics. Laura, did you remember? Well, that's not good for the person in charge of our equity updates, so I guess we'll need to fix that access. So, Director Finch, sorry, I kind of hijacked what you were going to comment on there, I think.
Oh, no, I was curious, and I didn't know if we wanted to, at some point, have a response to our community commenters from tonight.
Yeah, I think we do. And, I think the thing I could acknowledge, on that topic is, it's a horribly tragic situation, right? And I think for us, I think there was some feelings obviously triggered because of the district lowering flags to half staff yesterday under the direction of the governor. Obviously, we don't evaluate those requests. When those are communicated out, our school buildings follow those. And so we don't evaluate the different, orders, or even if it's stated in the fine text about encouraged to do so. But I also don't think that's reflective to our commitment to our kids. And but I do think what comes through in those sentiments is people not feeling seen or valued all the time. And so for us to continue to look for ways to make sure that we are seeing and valuing all of our people, I think is important. And so I'd agree with you. I think we do need to have some kind of a follow-up conversation there.
Great. Thank you. Anything additional from directors? Before we adjourn, just a reminder that there is a closed session after this meeting. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and safe travels.